12. This video is going to be the first one of two on religion. So today we're going to look at public and private religion, and then in the next video we're going to look at death and tombs. There are a lot of terms today that'll pop up through the rest of the video, so if you need to pause it and have a look at it, you can. So as we've already discussed, religion and politics are pretty closely linked. If you're a politician, religion is seen as helpful to running the state, and as a good Roman citizen, it was kind of good to uphold your religious duties. And they had plenty of gods, many of them borrowed from Greek gods, and they've got sacrifices and prayers, and I've put sacrifices twice. They're polytheistic, which we already know what that means, and a lot of their daily aspects of life are represented by a god. And all gods should be honoured, but some of them tend to be more favoured than others. So we've got around 10 temples in Pompeii. We don't have any temples yet excavated in Herculaneum. The purpose of the temples is essentially to house the statues to the gods, and things like rituals can be performed there, and sacrifices and stuff like that by the priests and priestesses. And the sheer number of temples, particularly because we have temples in the Forum as well, shows us that religion is quite important to their lives at the time, and has got quite a connection to politics as well. But we'll go over some of the specific temples in class. So, common features of the temples, often surrounded by our Greek-style columns, as you can see, and often if we had a statue of the god in the middle, it's often on a raised platform. So we've even got a staircase leading up to it. We've got this rectangular platform, and then we've got this section here. Now I've seen this called a cella or a cella. I don't mind how you pronounce it. You're not going to get marked on pronunciation. For this particular photo of the Temple of Apollo, there definitely was once a statue of Apollo here that along the line has gone missing, which is a shame. We've also got an altar down here that could have had sacrifices on it as well. If you need to pause it and have a look at some of the different gods that come up and where they get their name from the Greek versions, you can do that here. All of these orange temples, we are going to cover them in class. We also spoke about the idea of the imperial family being worshipped as well. So when Augustus was emperor, he essentially turned himself, or he helped turn himself into a god with the people. He wanted them to worship him. So people began to worship his divine spirit and associate him with good fortune. And we've even got a temple called Temple of Fortuna Augusta. You even had a particular group, and they're a religious college of priests called the Augustales, who they kind of they almost dedicated themselves to the worship of Augustus. And the interesting thing about the Augustales, if you remember, if you were a slave that you got free and you became a freedman, this was potentially a way that you could exercise some political standing and power by becoming one of the Augustales. Now, just in people's homes, we do find a lot of things called a lararium. Now, look, this is a lararium here. It's a small shrine in the house. Some of them are pretty elaborate. Some of them even have that 3D look where you've got a picture on the back, and then you've got it's almost like a 3D, the Greek column and the Greek temples that are kind of coming out of the wall for the shrine, with a little platform here that you could put offerings on. Now, religion is conducted by the head of the family, the paterfamilia, which, as we've spoken, is the male head of the family. So sorry, ladies. And we've got the lares here, and we've got the genius, which is all of these definitions are at the start of the video. And things like honey cakes and wheat, and even if you found like a small rat in the kitchen, you could sometimes dedicate a small rodent as an offering as well. Okay, but we find lararium or lararia, which is the plural, in many houses around Pompeii and Herculaneum. We even find Luraria, at shops as well. So even some of the fast food places we find around Pompeii, we can see some of these as well. Now, because Rome had a growing empire, they had more contact with other people from around the world. So we see things like Egyptian culture and Greek culture kind of seeping into life, and people starting to follow foreign gods and creating foreign cults. And there's a lot of reasons why that might have happened. Some people say the Roman religion was a little bit impersonal and foreign religions offered something a little bit more exotic, and also potentially explained what happens after we pass away a little bit better than the Roman religion did. So the two most important cults that we look at for Pompeii and Herculaneum is the cult of Isis from Egypt and the cult of Bacchus. Potentially these cults were only popular with the lower classes at first, like women, freedmen, and slaves. But we believe they became a little bit more widespread if we judge by the paintings and the objects found. This here is the Temple of Isis. Okay, it's not in the Forum; it's outside of the Forum. But the fact that Isis is important enough to get a temple actually says a little bit about the importance of it. And there were actually full-time priests that tended to this temple all the time, and it's even housed they shipped in like a supply of water from the Nile because the Nile was considered sacred. That's pretty awesome when you think about it, guys. We believe a lot of the worshippers were women. There's a whole bunch of different services and festivals that they had here as well that you can have a look at. This was also the temple that got damaged in the earthquake and was reconstructed. Okay, the other one is the very interesting cult, the worship of Bacchus. So Bacchus was the god of wine, and a lot of the festivals for this god became, let's say, very adult-style parties is what their reputation was. They were kind of the reputation was that they drank a lot and liked to dance, and essentially, supposedly, they got connection with their god through becoming incredibly drunk and dealing with pleasures of the flesh with one another is essentially how their parties went. Essentially, a great big old swingers party, and so originally it was quite small, and this cult was essentially made forbidden because it was seen as indecent by the Senate. So people that still did this carried it on in secret. We'll go over this in class, but the best evidence we have for this cult is a beautiful fresco we find in the Villa of Mysteries where we see weird, violent initiation rituals. Okay, so at Herculaneum, religion is also important, but remember the Forum is still unexcavated, but there is likely some connection to the Capitoline Triad. I know we didn't go over the Capitoline Triad today, but if we go back to this one for a second, the Capitoline Triad is pretty important. We've got like gods Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva in the Capitoline Triad temple. Okay, so the fact that we'd see a connection at Herculaneum is significant. Again, guys, the idea of Hercules, the mythological Greek hero, supposedly founded this town. So where it got its name from. So Hercules is quite important to the town. This was by the coast. So down here are the boat sheds where we find the skeletons with the splattered brains on the wall. And we've got up here, it's not a temple, but we find evidence of a cult of Venus. Okay, Venus is that goddess it's Aphrodite from Greece. So it's a goddess of like love and sex and beauty and stuff like that. So we don't have any temples in Herculaneum, but right over here there's a statue of Marcus Bulbus, and then we've got a sacred area right to the left of this where we've got it's a sacred area of the four gods, which I'll show you on the next slide. So these gods particularly like they were here. There was evidence that they're here before the earthquake. So there's a degree of importance that they hold. And what we believe is that the different workers of Herculaneum kind of favored a particular god for their business and like prosperity. So we've got Vulcan, who's kind of a metal worker of sorts. And then you've got Neptune, who's god of the sea. You've got Mercury, god of commerce, and then Minerva, who's a wisdom goddess for craftsmen. Okay, so we find that just to the left of where we saw our cult of Venus on the waterfront. Remember, this was all coast. Okay, so we've got the Augusteum also at Herculaneum. Now, this is the main strip, the Decumanus Maximus. Okay, the Augusteum is still unexcavated, but the Augusteum is essentially a big ass shrine to Augustus and the imperial cult. Okay, likely paid for by local magistrates or public funds. Across the way from our Augusteum is our College of the Augustules. That is essentially where the Augustules. It's I guess it's just a center for them to study, I guess, and tend to the Augusteum, which that's what they would have done. Okay, so this is a model of the Augusteum. This is a marble tablet with the dedication from the Augustules. And this is a picture from inside the College of the Augustules, not the Augusteum. And at the back, as you can see, we've got our Sacellum and our plinth on the back wall. And when we look at photos around, there are some amazing frescoes around the area that I'll show you. Okay, guys, apologies for my voice. It's quite early in the morning. And we'll cover Death and Tombs next time.